Good evening, everybody. 9 o'clock, we have a quorum, and I'll ask Nick to open our meeting.
Karakia kutati tēnei taro rangi nui e tuake nei, tēnei taro papatū nuku takoto nei, tēnei rangi rau ko papai takoto nei. Kia rā, te kua tāne kera ro tēnei tapo nei mātangao. Ka rangatia te au e piri, ka rangatia ko tāne e piri e tata, waka maua kia tūna. Tēnā, ui e tā.
Kia ora, everybody. Any apologies? I'm assuming Angus might show up shortly. No decorations of interest? No. Okay, we'll move to the minutes. Good boy, Larry. Nick, thank you, Nick. Can we do minutes all right? Action register.
There was one part on that which was around demonstrating how the tertiary filters work, so I've included that in the last report. Video. Much better than my description, ability to describe.
Look forward to that. And anything in the governance plan? So that's in the report. All right. Leaves of absence, acknowledgements and tributes. Public gathering. Any online? Brother? All right, so we'll move to our first reports, Drainwise.
We can take the report as read, we can answer any questions.
Committee have any questions?
I've got, you've got 90% of properties within the reticulated network have been inspected. How that means this, I mean that's great work, it's incredible for the length of time that we've been doing this project. So how long will it take to do the final 10%?
We think we'll be closed by the end of this financial year. So to close them out, all going to plan, and so that'll be first round, and then we'll move into a process of maintaining, I suppose, traction. There are versions at time issues, so it's still going to be a key focus for us.
Yeah, so Drainwise is going to be an ongoing program for a long time, not just after this continuous. So it's going to be cycled.
It will be at a lower gear ratio, if you like, because we've done the main sweep and more thorough. You can't stop any of this from ongoing.
No.
The team's focus will move to doing some in-depth investigations within identifying inflow issues through our network, as well as doing these home inspections. So.
I could have brought, I can bring this up in the next page, but it's probably appropriate for this one as well. I mean, there's been one reported overflow, one wet weather overflow event in this reporting session, but it doesn't include the one we've just had, which is, I guess, in the next reporting session, which by the time we have a next meeting is going to be a little bit outdated. So I'd just like to discuss that if possible, because the last one we had in January, we had quite light rain locally. Nothing, my understanding of our network is that if we are inundated in a short period of time with a huge amount of water, then we've got major problems. But the last lot of rain was a light rain over a long period of time, which I would have thought would have just kept the system going. And, so there must have been some lessons that were learned out of that, because it wasn't, I've witnessed a lot of overflows, and in this one I was really surprised to see it open. And apparently I heard, and I was told in no certain terms by the mayor, that it was 700% over capacity, and so it had to, but because it was only light rain, I would have thought the system could have handled a lot better.
It was the case, especially in the December one, in regards to there was a constant 10 to 12 mils an hour. In that second event, it was throughout that period we had an accumulated 120 odd mils of rain. It was lighter, but it was continuous. There were factors within the network which we're working through at the moment in regards to some constraints, so some blockages within certain areas where we had restrictions. But overall, the system was operating at about 700% of volume, which could be a reflection of that rain, that kind of, or those rain periods that kind of flowed through January. So keep that water table up meant that it didn't take as much rain as before. However, there was consistent rain leading up to that particular day, then of reasonable amounts of rain from an hourly perspective. The positive thing, minimal positive thing that comes out of it is the smart sensors we've got in the access holes actually helped us kind of navigate our way through to where were the challenges arising from. But the sensors did indicate consistency between the December event and the January event in regards to the system was coping through to a point, and then there was a substantial inflow of stormwater, it would be, that pushed the system over the edge. Yeah. Both events work closely with our contractor to ensure that the valves are only open for the shortest possible time to try and minimise the impact on the environment. What you would have seen in the December one, they were closed very early that next morning, and it was the same endeavour for the January one as well. But there are questions around that. We are working through that to identify, and these smart sensors, along with the flow meters that we'll install in there, will help us understand the reasons around this. Yeah.
Was there a particular area that the sensors picked up that was more inflow than others?
There was areas across both Kaiti, Mangapapa, predominantly where there was consistency in regards to where they reached a certain point and overflowed, and there was consistency in that across those two areas, similar to the event in December as well. December one was interesting. In fact, Met Service had tracking off down to 5 mil and 2 mil of rain, but it went the other way. It went 10 mil, 12 mil, 14 mil, and it was those last kind of hour periods that would have resulted in accumulated localised flooding with topping gully traps and coming through or whatever, events that just pushed the system over, similar for the January one. Yeah.
Cool, thank you very much.
Cool.
Kia ora, tēnā koe, Mr. Chair. I really enjoyed reading this report because the timelining, you can see the position, you can see it's within budget, so it was really awesome to make my way through the report and see that this had been completed, it's running to budget, it's doing all of that is really positive because sometimes it's few and far between when you get a report like that at the council table, so thank you very much. I just wanted to ask about, and this may be a little side or to this report, but the success of within the city Drainwise program is really advancing, but there's no mention of drainage up the coast. I know it's something that our rural communities are really really hammer home about drainage and clearing out and the consistent checking of their drains and things like that. So is there a similar project set up for rural communities in terms of this Drainwise program?
Yes, so that does sit outside this one, but yes, definitely we are working with the team in regards to that proactive approach to maintaining infrastructure up the coast and those communities, and that has been a focus over the last couple of years that I've been here with the team and whatnot too, to make sure that we have a schedule which sets out this is the timeline that on an annual basis, how many times, our assets, and the assets are complicated, but there's the stormwater assets, there's the roading assets, there's the land, rivers and coastal assets. So our focus remains on the stormwater assets. However, Tim, from a director level, has all three of those different areas working together through a rural forum to try and ensure that collectively we're on top of maintaining that. Obviously, we've had quite substantial impact very recently, which has seriously impacted even the tributaries to our assets, and we're going through with the recovery team, or what will be the recovery team, or remediating those as well.
Yes, so all the wastewater networks up the coast are private, so that element is absent from the similarity with Drainwise. The stormwater does cross a lot of different jurisdictions, if you like, so there's elements that are purely Three Waters, but they only reside within the populated centres. And then there's roadside, which is under my hub as well. And then there's also state highway, which is not us. So we have been running right through last year and coordination with all of those groups around the small communities to manage drainage challenges. Often it's all three involved. So some element of in-town drainage going into a road, but then usually the state highways driving straight through some of the communities, so that's an element as well. And then when it's a river, it's rivers. So yeah, not always as coordinated as we like, but we've made a specific effort to pull them all together, led by our manager in that space, who's been active in that, very proactive in that space.
Just one other thing, it's awesome to see that it's very clear that our iwi partners are against the flushing of waste into our rivers. Just for council to consider as well the IEMP recommendations. So all of our iwi have their environmental management plans. I know that Te Aitanga Mahaki and Manuhiri have recently updated theirs, so those give some really good descriptions too on what their bottom lines are in terms of wastewater, almost anything. So that could also feed into some response from iwi. Those two particular have just been updated, so I'm sure there will be areas in there that could be taken into consideration in terms of our iwi engagement, because they've only just signalled those within the last 6 months. So just flagging that, and thank you for the report, and I'm happy to move.
Rhonda.
Kia ora, morena tātou. Can I refer us to page 26 and paragraph 49, please, in relation to salt ecology? My question is with regard to this report talks about the implementation back in September of salt ecology, being able to assess the virus persistence in shellfish once we let water through the scales and in this particular space. Are there any other forms of measurement that actually tell us whether or not that process is continuing to degrade particular species in the waterway?
unsure within that space. The focus has been around what was required within the dry weather window flow consents to look at the impact on Kaimoana within the rivers and leading out into just into the bay. But we can certainly ask questions and investigate that.
Can we, I'd like to ask that, could we have a report to actually scope what is known about how the impact of us letting wastewater overfilled things through the waterway space? What do we know in terms of degradation of that environment? What do we know is our impact on that? I note for the fact that we've done really better in terms of Drainwise, and that's great, but do we have any previous statistics or data that shows what the impact was on those environments prior to improving this? We know water flow is one that we test, but we're actually not testing environmental impact, and that's the part that is the real issue, because we take care of humans' property, but we're not actually sure that we're maintaining the ecology there that can help the species themselves do their jobs as part of the living environment. Kia ora.
Nick?
I'd like to firstly thank staff for being a very comprehensive report. I always love all the colours and stuff. It's a quick go-to visual, boom, and you can see the changes that have been happening over time in terms of mahi. I've got 2 points to raise. This particular cycle of mahi will round up where it's been indicated end of the financial year, and the next cycle is somewhat smaller, is, if I'm hearing correctly. Will that change the budget considerations we should take into account going forward the next financial year? Or should we maintain the same so that we can ensure that the mahi is happening appropriately, or whether or not we might be perhaps at risk of losing some of that budget?
I think what Tim was referring to is those home inspections, and that they will, there's the activity that happens in there in regards to how much we're doing on a weekly basis will be pulled back slightly in regards to, we don't need to, because we've done one full round, we can now maybe take 2 or 3 years or so, or whatever that may sit, to make sure we keep continuity in that. It's a very small part of the overall budget. Drainwise as a whole, looking at all those, you've got the home inspections, we've got, and we say with the home inspections, our focus will definitely continue within identifying sources of infiltration, stormwater infiltration, and to a degree inflow, so that then we're focusing our, having a focused area on resolving those issues, and we need to maintain our track record of improving the performance of the network so that we don't have those overflow issues that we had recently. The renewals programs, which are the substantial parts around the budget, will continue through, and that sits within a key focus of maintaining the network, improving the performance of both the stormwater and wastewater networks. And again, as those investigations build traction, may identify more public drains on public properties that we have to put in to manage localised flooding. So that it's a multifaceted approach, and the home inspections are just one aspect of it.
Adding to that, I don't think we'll reach a stage ever where home inspections or face-to-face engagement with our customers is not a really important thing to do. But we will reach a stage where blanket assessments are probably not the best form of spending money. So once you're at 100%, you might want to be a bit more targeted and go, well, what themes come up? Houses with new buildings on them, yeah, that's a theme. We go look at those ones. But not necessarily everything, because you want to deploy your limited resources the best way possible. We're also developing more intelligence in our network over time, which will hopefully indicate when we've got a problem emerging or that didn't exist previously in a particular area, so we'd focus on those areas. That's also, but we'd just deploy the budget separately but have the same aim and hope to continue productively.
I guess my question was, or my comment was around how vigorously should we be looking forward to defend our budgets going forward from the financial year?
We think there's a lot of value in this budget because, welcome the question. What is the, how do we manage that? How do we look at the value? It's something the committee can help us with in the value of that, because there's straight up economic value in some things we can extract, and then there's our environmental values and some more subjective topics as well, which is the committee will have views on. So those are welcome.
I do have a further comment. Page 28, paragraph 68. Just a comment about the Tangata Whenua Reference Group meeting dates for 2026, whether or not those dates had been set, and whether or not there was opportunity for wider community engagement with that committee. I'm particularly thinking of the river users, wakaanga clubs, and maybe fisher people who have a more intimate connection to the condition and the well-being of the river.
I can advise, I have met with the chairperson last week, and we have agreed the meeting dates for 2026. There'll be 5 meeting dates. In addition to that will be the the workshops around the cultural monitoring plan and flowing into the next report, the AUD activities as well. So it's setting 5 formal meetings and then have that group meeting as required to maintain traction on work streams. But certainly can bring that up within that committee to discuss reaching out to impacted.
Kia ora, I want to come back to your previous conversation that in a response from Tim in relation to our rural spaces and stormwater and the bringing together of those 3 areas that are now managed under manager. My question is, how do we know we're doing better in that area? And from the perspective of those people that live in the rural areas, may not necessarily understand the network in the way that we're understanding it at this table. So there's the part of how does the community know we're doing better, and how do we know that our inputs are actually creating a better system for them?
I think in the last few years we've probably had more rain events than it's historical. So some of those, that's often front of mind as the last event that happened. Good question on how we're doing better. We're taking more care to talk to our communities on these subjects, including meeting and visiting them to talk about them. Often we find there's a mixture of understanding on where there's private drains and where there's public drains as well. It's not always, sometimes the complaints are coming around drains which might be private, and maybe there's a history of council assisting with those drains and then an expectation to continue. But we can answer to our drains insofar as, with the exception of Te Araroa and Onipoto and Wharekahika, which have totally been filled and are right now being mediated by a number of parties. I think we've got a reasonable grasp on the condition that they work as designed. So we can get, when you've got a flood event, essentially that means that it's exceeded what drainage is doing. So flood events, they're not designed for flood events. What they do is help you return the whenua to how you manage it normally in a quicker period of time. So there's often some confusion about that. Don't have a hard answer on our metrics, so comparison to how well we're doing compared to before.
Thank you. It's a moot question in today's environment, especially as we know the last 5 years have been very tough. I had a subsidiary, if we could go back to page 68, and this was piggybacking off Councillor Tupara. And my question is, what in the future will be the place of tangata whenua cultural monitoring plans and even the environmental plans that Councillor Ria spoke about, and with regard to knowing that within the next 4 months the Planning and Natural Environment Acts come in, and then what play will those particular interfaces have with work, especially in light of you talking about private interests, Tim, because these acts are moving towards the elevation of private interests first. And so I'm wondering, what then does that mean for this work in relation to tangata whenua expectations to continue to provide, one, advice and guidance, and secondly, in relation to the maintenance of environmental health and well-being?
Kia ora, through you, Mr. Chair, tūtai ake mihi ana kia koe, Councillor Tupara, nā tātou hui whakatūwhiri I te ata nei. Tēnā koe, Councillor Tibble, pātai pai rawa atu tērā. What I can't provide certainty on is what the new regime will look like, I guess, in terms of detail and what expectations or new expectations will be placed within any redrafted legislation. However, I do point to our local demographic, rima te kaumātoru pai hiniti o tātou horapa I te tairawhiti he Māori. So 53% of our regional population is of Māori descent, identify as Māori. I have had a strong sort of sense and feel from elected members, from our executive team, that ahakoa ngā rāwekitanga o tēnei kāwana, regardless of, I won't say regardless, whatever the new regime that we transition into, to align with our democratic function, it's still pertinent that we are able to maintain our partnership commitments and our relationships with hapu, with iwi, across te tairawhiti, and I guess to strengthen that, we've spoken with a lot of iwi taiao, hapu taiao groupings at the back end of last year, and once we have a little bit more clarity as council around what the new regime may be, we've actually committed to getting together collectively to work through and understand how we navigate together what the new regime may look like. And so while I can't give it a definitive answer at this stage, what I will say is I feel that there's a strategic and an operational leadership commitment to maintain our partnership and relationship space, and as the detail in the reform unfolds, as I've said, we've made a commitment to sitting down with our partners at a hapu and iwi level to understand how we navigate that together and get clear on, I guess, what our expectations are of each other moving forward. And that would entail, like you say, how do we navigate ngā take o te wā if the law is saying, oh, you know, councils, you no longer have to do A, B and C. We need to work that out together, but certainly a commitment to maintaining closeness and relationship to work that out together.
If I can have I suppose my interest too is going forward in this new environment, how we maintain those settled iwi's rights in relation to what belongs to them there, and those iwi who are not yet settled but might be in ngā hono, and the difference between those two, should I say, devices, but also too the notion of equivalence that's coming out of those acts, because nowhere is the government at this point getting attention to what equivalence might mean, given that the Resource Management Act is actually an enabler of all settlements. Yeah. So just want to keep that hold on the table, because I certainly think that for the 53%, we didn't go through the process to win those things, only to have them lost again through legislation. So just putting that front and centre. Tēnā koe. Kia ora.
Penny, do you have anything?
Morena koutou, tēnā koe, Jean. Thanks for that kōrero, Jean, because from the outside it does look like council is perhaps steering a different path than where a number of other councils may go. And that's the crux in this room. We are at the behest of where council wishes to take their relationship with iwi forward. But yes, no, each iwi group is, as Aubrey has said, are working hard with trying to understand the resource management and how to make submissions to better affect that relationship going forward. And I think the last comment I have, Chair, is that whatever happens in Parliament, the conditions of our consent that we have, existing consent, can't be interfered with. So we still have a core that we can work to around this table. Kia ora.
Thanks, Ben. Just one comment from me on that. I've got faith that councillors will do what's right for our community and what's right for iwi. And the Wastewater Committee itself is a mechanism where we've made those changes, where we've stepped above and beyond what might be required from legislation. So I see there's no reason for us to change that. The report's moved by Aubrey, seconder. Thank you. AUD.
A preface on this report, given we met at the end of last year, we didn't have much activity within the space, so it's, there wasn't a great deal of update within the AUD report. It was really just a bit of a status, how we're tracking on a couple of key projects within the space. So if I take it as read, we can answer any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you for saying it's pretty similar to the last report, because from the last report we were told that the Aupuni Trust that project was not part of the AUD. So when I read this, I thought, oh, something must have changed. So maybe obviously it hasn't, because it's a similar report.
What I did within that report is just temper the activity that's going on with Aupuni Moana. There's a massive project there. There's just one small application of that project that could entertain further treatment of wastewater. So just keeping it within that space, because you're actively pursuing that within their project.
Yeah.
So good for this committee to be aware of that.
Yeah. So it is. So it could be still part of that whole process.
Could be whether the committee accepts that that's an avenue they want to go down and whatnot. It's just good as that project progresses in its holistic form, that there is still an aspect in there that could be of interest to this committee.
So as that progresses, will we get updates from of what their proposals are and timelines?
Would continue to.
It's a very exciting project, and it's a future-proofing a lot of areas in our region, actually, sport-wise, culturally-wise, and infrastructure-wise. So,
happy to take the lead of this committee in that, but the intent would be to, as it pertains to our activity in this group, to bring those updates through as they take shape. They're definitely just in their kind of fledgling period of doing their investigations and their preliminary work to identify if their project meets the requirements to move forward. So that'll progress over time, so we'd certainly be comfortable if they're comfortable in allowing us to bring those updates through.
A couple of points. The first one is on the first page, page 30, second to the bottom paragraph, potential stage 3. It talks about polishing wetland. So I wonder if you can expand a little bit on not so much the polishing, but what's the tarnished part of the wetland that needs polishing? Just for clarity of that, I'm taking it that the water goes through the treatment plant, so it's pretty polished, but by the time it gets there, Just for some clarity on that.
Polishing is a term used in the treatment of water as a final stage. It's a pretty general term. It could be a final filtration. It's called polishing, but it's recognition that the actual it's a final treatment stage. And in the case of water coming out of the treatment plant, it gets sun's UVs. It interacts with plants, etc. in that water body. That's what the polishing's referring to. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. My other point is I'm heartened to see that part of the report and the relationship between council and other ministers. Comes back to some of these other engagements we have with iwi and with our community, and more particularly what's happening around the Kiwa group with the mortuary waste issue. Something that we don't often champion out in the community, that these relationships are there and strong enough to deal with issues that are hugely significant culturally, that perhaps the wider community doesn't even realise. But it's credit to staff and council for the engagement and the nature of that engagement and the stage that they've reached around those engagements. And I think that's something that staff in this committee should acknowledge, that work that goes into that, not only the reports, but all of that background relationship building stuff, which I hope sets an example for some of the other issues that have been raised by other members of the committee.
Kia ora, I just have one on the mortuary mound. Given the recent reports to Council on the limited future viability of Taruhiru Cemetery, because of the space and the environmental impacts following Gabrielle and associated to weather events and the rising of the water table under the... Has that been considered, and how would that affect the development of the mortuary mound?
It was certainly considered within the design of the mortuary mound, which is why all of its treatment sits above the ground level and in a location where there isn't flooding or isn't an issue. So it's quite an extensive program where they arrived at through designers and the group around the design that would fit the purpose. It is innovative, as there are no other ones in the country, but by all the work that's gone into it, it's an appropriate location and design for achieving the positive outcomes that we're looking for within that space.
And one other, so the mortuary mound, it's essentially derived from the Wisconsin mound. That's the same sort of thing, eh? So the Wisconsin mound is a kaupapa that Kiwa has been talking about for quite a few years now, and I remember when the topic of Wisconsin mound was brought up, that it was kind of 50-50, that there was some real support and then some hapu that didn't agree with the... So I just want to flag that for, in terms of our engagement when it goes out to the community, that it's... I value the expertise of the Kiwa group, but we have to ensure that it's across the community, it has support. So I just wanted to flag that, because I know that the idea of the Wisconsin mound 6 years ago was not as popular 6 years ago, and hence the reason why it's taken 6 years to develop something where this is now being used in this mortuary scenario. So I just wanted to flag that, but thank you for the report.
Any further questions? Just one from me, probably you, Tim, in terms of wider trust. So I understand the council leadership and engagement and progressing the wetlands approach, but like Larry, I'm keen to see some sort of report back in terms of where that's going in terms of the AUD process, not how the negotiating things. Because we're funding part of this, aren't we?
There's a minor amount of funding up front for the initial scoping and investigation that's then led into the broad scoping of the wider project and the funding required to advance that. So it was in the initial phase, in our interest, as we've talked about, was that polishing wetland to have contact with the whenua of moving through. So our funding aspect of that ended in the last financial year in regards to
On the topic of the AUD element, recorded in the last minutes were discussion at the end, I believe, where we'd learned a lot. So I think what you're asking for is us to summarise what we've learned so we can get that on written record and then reset with whatever aspirations that's what's our time to best use. I think that's what we were getting to because
I just want to ensure that technical knowledge that we've gathered
yes.
is not lost on that project.
Yeah, and where we'd got to was the aspiration was there, but the economics weren't.
Yeah.
But that doesn't preclude the economics being more favourable sometime in the future when dust it off and get it back, sort of thing. Yeah.
So, any further questions? Someone move the report. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Larry.
Right.
With overflows. I think Larry's asked all our questions.
Yeah, I thought it was actually.
a little preface on this one too. This is the performance report for the 24-25 financial year. So it is as required by the consent. We produce a report on how that year went and the activities within that against dry weather and wet weather overflow consents, which is why it's from the period of 1st of July 24 through to the end of June 24. A little bit late on that.
Any questions to the report? Nick?
Just an inquiry at page 59, from the table there, the second line on the table, referring to the maintenance of Hidden Street debris or Party Hill Settlement Track. That area has become absolutely so a very popular walkway now, including those folk that want to go down to the beach or go up the hill. But the build-up of debris is very obvious, particularly given the very attractive artistic treatment that's been received up on the roadside there at Hidden Street, and it attracts people to that spot. And as soon as they glance over, it doesn't match that on the other side. So my question is really around the maintenance regime and management, because now that thoroughfare has become a key one for users for our city. I mean, just whether or not that area is sufficiently managed and maintained.
Certainly seen as a critical part of our whole infrastructure, and potentially with this new event coming up, we will clean it out. We are quite surprised, even through the say recently, if you look at recently through December and January, we've cleaned that out several times. The volume of items that come down through the brewer that accumulates at that end is, there might be a broader endeavour here in regards to trying to stop or help people understand that it's not a disposal area, and there is a natural impact. That's both for green waste and general waste, but From my perspective, we are trying to be as proactive as possible within that space. It is through weather events that drags items down to that spot, and when we do clean them out before storm events, and if there's accumulation after an event, we'll send the team back to clean it out as well.
Certainly when you see that, you look further up the creek, where the planting is happening, and it's a bit greener and things, you can see the potential of it, and it is just that bottleneck there that, as you say, things accumulate.
Any further questions? No? Nothing else? I move the report. Thank you, Aubrey. Nice report.
I'll second, Ronald.
Thank you, Pete. Right, final report. Upgrades. On our video, is it?
We'll move into the video. And just to talk to this, this is to the end of December, this report, and it does note that we've had some positive advances with our tertiary filter journey that we've been on for a while now. So really positive signs within that space around all the activity that we've obviously undertaken over that period to get to a point where the filter is performing better, substantially better. We've still got some refinement to do within that space with the vendor and our team, but at the moment the indications are positive for us to get to an end point on this journey that we have been on, and I hope in the next report to bring more information from this space around so yeah, I just wanted to say that this committee has been on this journey for a while now, and all the work and the effort from this committee and the team is coming to the fore now in regards to that last piece of that puzzle. Performance of the plant has been very good since the last meeting and whatnot, and there's continuity in what that stage 2 development brings. So yeah, very good positive stuff. And we're able to look at a video of exactly what a tertiary filter does and is.
I might make some comment before we look at the video, Mr. Chair. What's been happening across the country and other centres, particularly down south and in Wellington, we seem to be pretty solid and robust. Most of those events seem to be some issue of technical malfunction or some other thing, but reading the report on Hearten that we're tracking okay, we keep an eye on things, we appear to be less at risk than perhaps other regions have. Any comment about that?
I'll say.
Maintain that, yes.
By you.
Touch wood.
Signs, and I think it's a dedicated effort from council and the team of the importance of keeping that plant operating efficiently. Obviously, it goes hand in hand with the network management as well. It's a journey together, but yeah, really good, positive progress within that space, and they're very focused on maintaining that continuity of performance, and I suppose the district has shown, and this committee has shown the pathway that we are ahead of many in that respect. Yeah, so it's been really positive.
Also scrutiny and investment for 20 years really, in this space. So it's the scrutiny, this committee is locked into this subject, so it keeps it front of mind.
So just to comment, Mr. Chair, to acknowledge the vigilance of the staff in ensuring the safety of our system and our community.
Yes, I'd like to reiterate that, and looking at Appendix 5, the positive responses there, I know when we did the consents, we were looking to bring down those measures as much as we could. It's good to see the targets have been all not exceeded. Larry?
Just on that, does other councils have the same setup as what we do with the Wastewater Management Committee when we've got 50% tangata whenua and involved with their committees? Is this are we a leading edge committee in the country? Something that we could role model for other regions, particularly in light of all the different things catastrophes that are happening around the country with wastewater treatment plants. It keeps us front of mind every 6 weeks when we have a meeting and keeps everything up to date and monitoring and all that. So is that a norm for most councils?
Maybe Dean can help with that question.
For you, Mr. Chair, certainly councils do have different variations of partnership representation, often sort of statutory committees, but more broadly those will often oversee the partnership priorities as a collective as opposed to sort of breaking them out between, why, taiao, infrastructure and the likes. They are sort of catch-all spaces, you like, and often determined by the priorities of has been decided by those partners in terms of reference across the country. I do think, and not that it's about being first, but I do think we certainly are a council that offers and creates the space for shared governance and decision making over areas of importance for our partners across the region. To realise some of those opportunities, but tūwhera tonu ana ngā tatau, the doors are still open, and I think we'll just keep continuing to work to find those settings that are going to maximise everybody's time, capacity, capability, in order to ensure that we are talking about the things that are important to our partnership priorities.
Yeah. So on top of that, is a Wastewater Management Committee a common committee for most councils?
Not that I have seen. We are very unique in terms of our consent conditions and settings, and so certainly a byproduct of that environment. But I'm not going to say none exist, but I'm not aware of any other wastewater management partnered wastewater management spaces.
Even just having, even if it's not a partnership, there's no wastewater management committees as such.
No.
Typically.
No, normally it's bundled with the general waters.
Yeah, right.
And this is compelled by our consent conditions. So from that foresight then, it provides us with this committee now, and to a large extent we're compelled to do particular reporting by legislation. We've got another item we want to raise an extra business about the Integrated Water Management Committee as well. With that being compelled by government, but that has an obvious overlap. So
it does. It's the same focus.
Slightly different focus, but actually the probably 90% overlap. Really, really close. So that's something we want to mention today.
Just add one thing, Mr. Chair. Just, because back in 2021, the Gisborne District Council was the first council to rule on not allowing mortuary waste to enter the sea with that bylaw. So by those terms, we're quite, we are leading, in these conversations of making specifically wastewater a priority. And given the amount of our natural disasters and rain warnings that come up, it is a really high priority because of our stormwater and our drain system and the overloading. And so we can
Well done, everybody.
sometimes stumbling, but always trying really hard to get it right and work out new processes to move forward.
What's the movie?
got a movie.
Can we? This is a tertiary filter. So this is our tertiary filter, as our beautiful little title there. I thought it was good to sort of see what we actually have got. We've got a video of Hydrotech has provided us with this, and this is specifically how our filter works.
The volume's not working.
So this is actually, these are what filter wastewater. So that's actually the filter medium, and the filter is designed so that the filtered medium, the raw wastewater comes through the centre of the filter, and it passes out through those filter discs into the tank that sits around the filter disc. So this body of water is the filtered water at that point, and that'll show you in a minute how the filter works as it gets blocked. What happens is it rotates, and then there's a series of spray nozzles around each disc. We should actually get Tracy to talk to this, but that flush those filter pads. It pushes that debris that's accumulated on the inside down through a passage in the inside into an accumulation section, and those solids then pass back through, or those collected waste passes back through through a tube back into our system again. So it goes back through. That's it really. A filter takes, in this case, wastewater, passes it through a medium to filter items out. That filtered water then passes through into the next stage, and the collected media that's been removed passes back through and goes back through our treatment system again, I think. Yeah.
Is that pre the bio-trickling or pro?
That's a polishing.
It's
a polishing. It's right at the end.
Yeah, right.
So it's not really wastewater going in there.
No.
It's treated water going in there.
Yeah.
So it's off the final clarifiers
The
going in
solids
there.
are more.
Tracy will correct me when I'm wrong, but and the challenge we had, and Tracy, please correct us, was that our cleaning wasn't keeping up with the fouling. So you saw that discoloration demonstrated in the video. Spraying. So Tracy might want to add a bit more detail to that.
Because the sleeves are too fine.
So what happens with the tertiary filter is that there's backwashing nozzles that are on there, which you can see on those bars in the picture. And so what was happening was basically we'd ended up with some nozzles that just weren't actually providing the right pressure, so we couldn't get that clean. And so we've ended up with a whole set of new nozzles. We've installed those, and so we've actually been running those filters again to see how we go. So there were sort of three mechanisms for cleaning: backwash, high pressure clean, and chemical clean. And so right back at the start, really the nozzles weren't really doing what they meant to do, which meant that we were trying to use a high pressure clean, which we were trying to resolve. We've got parts coming for that to try and fix that. And then we had the chemical clean. So at the beginning, it was a huge effort to try and keep them clean. But now that we've got the new nozzles, it seems a lot more sort of positive. And so this is in quite a dirty state. It's not looking like that as much at the moment because we've got that much more better nozzle things. So we will be looking at it. We've got a little bit of optimisation just to do, just to make sure that we've got everything dialed in. But yeah, we'll still be looking through that and then looking towards getting it fully up and running and operational. So a little bit left to do, but we're close.
We acknowledge all the work outside of the filter that the team did too to get the influent water under control. From time to time though, we can expect the influent water to destabilise in different situations. If someone dumps a whole load of surfactant in our wastewater or something, it can have a knock-on effect. We have a pretty plug flow process, so we don't get big buffering elements. What that means?
Pretty much water in, water out.
Yeah.
There's no upstream pond or storage, which a lot of people do think we have, which we don't. So we're very much a reactive plant. We have to process as it goes. So the upside with the tertiary filter as well is it is almost at the end. So basically the UV is the only other thing after. So basically it's gone through the biological trickling filter, so it's had its biological transformation. It then goes into a clarifier where we take out those bugs, and then from there it goes through to the tertiary filter. All the solids get processed elsewhere, basically through the tertiary filter, through the UV, and then out. So it sounds really simple when you go it's ABC, but it's quite a modern system. Like if you go other places, you don't see a lot of this stuff. So we're working with our very modern.
Yeah. Our Hawke's Bay friends don't have this level of treatment.
Of course not. Just a query, Tracy. So, in the event the Awapuni Trust project eventuates, the water for that project would come from this end of our process?
Yes.
From the UV, yep.
Following this, the UV follows this.
Yep.
So by the time it's getting out to that project, we're pretty much polished up. Our contribution pretty much.
Is it 98?
The reality is that what we're putting out now is incredibly clean. Like we're often below bathing water standards, which is kind of what we're testing for. We do testing around the outfall. And we've got very, very low solids. If you look at the solids levels that are allowed around New Zealand and other people's consents, never mind the wastewater standards, but we're very low. And so what we're putting out there is very so by the time it gets to this wetland, it is effectively just a polish through earth, and then wherever it goes from there will be the final. But yes, we have done really well to get to before we even get to that, in my opinion. So
Tracy? Over.
It's really exciting because when the three of us first got elected to council, we did haerenga to the wastewater, and we had not yet had the UV filter, not yet had this machine, and it was just kind of hopes and dreams and aspirations for the possibility of land-based pond which could rejuvenate swamp-like and use more natural ways of water reticulation to sort of bring the health of the water back and use it in more productive ways than for it to just be flushed. So it's actually really exciting. It's really exciting to see how it's progressed over the nearly 4 years now we've been here. Thank you everyone.
It's a resource, and whether it's used in conjunction with other water for a wetland. If there's other water involved, well, that's just going to make it even better because it'll dilute it even more, even though it's as clean as it can possibly be. So, and where other region is there a huge resource right by them like that? Lake Taupo, I guess, we've got a lake, but have that water close by when you've got all this productive land and everything around the place is just such an asset, such an asset.
Moved by Aubrey. Rhonda, thank you. We do a close, and Rhonda, would you like to close?
Ai, I te ata nai whakarongo mai ki tō mātou huihuinga me ngā tini kōrero kei roto. Ko te inui ngā tiki a koe ki whakapaingia e nei whakahaere ringi tinga tumatatamu i te wairua tapu.